And I'm looking forward to speaking with everyone this evening. Joining me, I have one of our graduates, Danish, who will be speaking with you about his experience, why he selected an international medical school, what he's currently doing. So he'll be able to answer any questions that you have. And also for support, I have Xavier Marcus, one of our admissions officers, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you have in regards to the admissions process. So Danish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Got to unmute myself first. My name is Danish Arastu. I actually graduated from UCLA, did my undergrad there in physiological sciences, then went on to St. George's University, got my Doctor of Medicine there. I also got my MBA from the same university. Currently, I'm a senior resident, third year at Arrowhead Medical Center in Family Medicine. Just here to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you. Xavier, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Guys, I'm here pretty much for support through the whole time. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to put them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them.
Thanks, Xavier. So we will have the chat and the Q&A box open. You can go ahead and put all of your questions in the Q&A box and we'll be able to get some of those answered. Some of those we will select and answer live for you as well. So without further ado, I want to be mindful of your time and go ahead and get started and talk with you about a guide to choosing an international medical school. I know a lot of people think of international medical schools and you think of why would I want to do that when I plan on practicing in the United States? Well, a lot of students do consider that option. And I want to let you know that on average, students tend to apply to about 17 schools when they're looking to get into medical school. And some of those schools are international schools. So there are a ton of options for you. And we're going to go over things that you should consider as you're looking at international medical schools. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can go over a presentation and you'll be able to jot down some of the factors. And I believe this will be recorded so you can refer to it later as well. So when you look at international medical graduates, we'll refer to them moving forward as IMGs. They comprise of about 25% of the total physician workforce in the United States. And that number has increased. From 1963, it was about 10%. And now it's about 25%. So as you can see, there are a lot of people who are opting to go into the medical field and they're looking at the route of choosing an international school as the vessel to get them there. So how do you know what to look for in an international school? Well, I'm going to go over 9 factors that you can consider as you are starting your search. So the first factor to consider is graduates matching and residencies of their choice. Of course, you want to know about the history of the school you're considering and what are their graduates doing? Were they getting into residencies of their choice? Did they have assistance from the university? What type of resources are available? Where are those graduates practicing? So those are some questions that you'll want to make sure you're asking the admissions team as you're talking to these different schools to make sure that the ultimate goal of getting into residency from these schools is aligned with what your goals are. Something very important to consider. Now, most students, when they do apply to residency, they match through a system in the US that's called the NRMP, which is the National Residency Matching Program. So how that works is basically a centralized application system in which you'll apply to hospitals of your interest and specialty of your choice. And then from there, they'll invite you in for an interview. And after the interview process is basically a ranking where you'll be ranked and they'll rank you also alongside other candidates. And then from there, you'll receive communication from the NRMP and the program then which matches you into the residency that you've been selected for after your graduation. Now, there are other countries have similar systems. So for example, in Canada, they have a CARMS, but it's pretty much a similar system. But most of our students, if you're going to a school such as St. George's University, you'll be matched through the NRMP. Now, when it comes to NRMP, over 2,990 students have matched into residencies alone. So an additional 4,000 of those non-US citizens also matched into residencies that year through the same program. And again, it was all through the NRMP, which is a National Residency Matching Program. And this makes St. George's University the #1 provider into first-year US residencies for the last 11 years combined. And the reason why is because our campus is so vast and we're able to assist so many students that we're able to then help that many people get into their residencies. So thus far in 2020, we have over 1,100 residencies that our students have obtained. So that's pretty significant. And when you look at our SGU residency placements, of course, you'll see the majority of our students going into internal medicine and family medicine because there's a huge need. So a lot of students do elect to go into those areas. However, we have people going into pediatrics, surgery, emergency medicine, OBGYN, anesthesiology, and lots of others. So whatever you're looking to do in regards to going into your residency, just make sure that the school is aligned with what your goals are. Now, Danish, can you speak a little bit about your residency process, how St. George's helped you to get there, and talk a little bit more about what you are currently doing?
Sure. So the one good thing about SGU, well, many good things, but one of the things that helps the most is they really care and track your progress as a student and even once you've graduated. So, right now you guys are pre-med, possibly, and then you'll apply, you get into medical school, but it doesn't just stop there. As a student, they lay it out very clearly for you. These are the things that you need to do in order to be successful. It's not just scoring on the exams, but how to start thinking, how to start molding your thought process, and really gearing you up to master the US medical licensing exam, which is basically your ticket into residency. There are some changes, there's some chatter about what's going to happen with that, but that hasn't quite happened yet. So it's really no point in talking about that. Your USMLE is a 3-step process. It's step 1, step 2, and step 3. And the good thing about the curriculum at SGU is that it is centered around the USMLE. So not only are you learning everything you need to know to be a good physician, but you're also learning and re-emphasizing points that will show up that are high yield on the USMLE. The reason why the USMLE is so important is kind of like the MCAT. When you take the MCAT and you kind of score mediocre, you don't really get noticed that much. But the higher you score, the higher your chances are getting into a really good medical school. Much the same way, USMLE, if you score really well, your chances of getting into competitive programs increase dramatically. The one difference is the USMLE, if you fail, you can take it over again, but it looks kind of bad. But if you pass and you barely pass with a minimal score, you're pretty much disqualified from many residency programs because they want like a minimum score for you to pass. And when I say that, it most of the time invokes a little bit of stress and anxiety. But most of the people from SGU feel very prepared because the format of the test, the type of questions they ask are modeled after the type of questions they will ask you on the USMLE. So when you are done with your didactics in medical school and you're gearing up, getting ready to take the USMLE, you're not as stressed because those points have been re-emphasized, and when you are studying for the test, most of it is review. Very little of it is, oh, I've never seen this before. So that was a very good thing. And then once you graduate, they kind of prep you. These are the things you should be doing. This is the paperwork that should be filed. in order for you to apply to U.S. residency programs. A lot of the dean's letters and all that stuff the university just takes care of. So it's, a lot of the extra paperwork that you need to do is completely taken care of and electronically submitted from the university directly to the programs that you apply to.
Thank you, Danish. That was a really good overview for everyone. Now, the next factor that you definitely would want to consider is your clinical training opportunities that align with your personal goals. So how will you explore these opportunities? How will you know what's even available for you? Well, it's through clinical rotations. And one of the things that you want to make sure about clinical rotations from schools is, do they provide places for you? Do you have to find your own? What type of support do they provide to you as you're going through your clinical rotations? Now, your clinical rotations occur during your 3rd and 4th year of medical school. So the way it breaks down is your first 2 years are comprised of your basic sciences. So that's where you'll be getting all your book work in, learning some of your clinical skills and preparing you to actually go into the hospital and do your rotations. Now, if you are practicing at a school like SGU or any other international school, of course, you'll be studying those 2 years abroad. And then for your clinical rotations, you will return to the United States, where you'll be able to then work in the affiliates and get those clinical rotations done. Now, in regards to our clinical rotations, we have over 70 plus hospitals and health systems in 3 countries, in the United States, Canada, and also the United Kingdom. And so the reason we have so many affiliates is because we want you to be able to have options. We want you to be able to really make this experience your own. You're able to select where you'd like to be and put in your preferences so that you can really hone in on the type of medicine that you like to study and also in the area where you'd like to practice medicine once you graduate. Now, Danish, when you were going and preparing for your clinical rotations, can you talk about how that whole process was once you finished your basic sciences, took your USMLE, got into clinical rotations? How was that whole experience for you? And how did you feel in regards to being prepared once you got into the hospital compared to students who had attended school in the United States?
Sure. So like you mentioned, there's a lot of clinical centers across the United States. I started out in Oakland. I did my internal medicine rotation there, and then from there I went on to the South Bronx at Lincoln Hospital and did most of my rotations there. The way that works is the university gives you an option. They ask you basically like a survey. Where would you like to go? And there are clinical centers where you can go, or you could jump around, hop around to different hospitals across the United States and kind of schedule your rotations that way. For the most part, your 3rd year, you do it all in one place, just so there's some continuity there. But the way they pick where you go is they ask you, where would you like to go? They do take into account if you are from a home state, such as Florida, New York, California, New Jersey, Chicago area. Then they'll try their best to accommodate you and put you in a hospital where you can do most of your co-rotations right there. Some people have significant others. Some people have all sorts of 100 million reasons that you would need to be somewhere. And from my experience and from my co-students, colleagues' experiences, the university does a pretty good job of accommodating those requests. As far as how well I was prepared, as I said, I did most of my rotations in the South Bronx, New York, where we had students from Columbia and NYU and a lot of other medical schools that were rotating through there. And one of the things that actually gave me most confidence in my training from SGU and as a medical student was when you're around and some of the attendings ask you questions, more often than not, I knew the answers and my colleagues knew the answers from SGU, and the students from Columbia or NYU, I'm not saying that they don't teach them there, but they didn't know the answers. And the fact that we were so confident, we just knew like a knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, I know the answer to that, I know what's going on. They would ask, well, okay, it's nice that you know the answer, but why is that the answer? And we were able to reason out why that was the answer and kind of tell you what the pathophysiology behind it is and all of that stuff. Really reinforced and kind of made me very proud to be a student from SGU. It showed the caliber of education that we were receiving compared to some of the top name universities in America. And so as far as how well prepared I felt very, very prepared. And even to this day, most of my colleagues that are in high places and who are chief residents and doing really well and excelling are from SGU. So yeah, very well prepared.
Thank you. Now, another factor to consider is demonstrated success on the USMLE, or the United States Medical Licensing Exam. Now, I know Danish talked a lot about this in regards to the fact that it's broken down into 3 steps. So before you go into your clinical rotations, you will take that first step 1, which is after your basic sciences, which is, as he stated, one of the most important tests you will take, because it really sets the stage for what you'll be doing in the medical field. So you want to make sure that whichever school you decide to attend, that they prepare you not only to just do well, you want to smash it. You want to do the best you can possibly do on this exam, and you want to be able to walk into this exam knowing that you are overly prepared for it, so to speak. And that's one of the things that SGU does in regards to helping prepare our students to make sure they do well on this exam. We have a 94% first-time pass rate on the USMLE Step 1 in 2019. And part of the ways that this occurs is because our curriculum is designed to support the USMLE exam. So let me tell you what that means. So when you're taking exams at SGU, they are designed to look like you're sitting for a USMLE step exam. And the reason that we do that is so that when you actually sit for the real exam, that anxiety of taking an unfamiliar test is kind of washed away, because this feels like you're just taking another SGU exam. And that way you can really just focus on the material itself and the content, which you'll be covering your basic sciences. Now, another factor to consider is the supportive learning environment. So yes, you want to make sure you go to a school that has students going into residencies that align with your goals. You want to make sure that, yes, you are able to get into clinical rotations, and that the USMLE exam is something that you know you'll be well prepared to take. But what type of support will you receive from the institution? Will they offer you tutoring, mentoring? What do you need to be a successful student? That's a factor that you must ask in your initial interviews with these universities, is what type of support will you provide? Here at SGU, we have a Department of Educational Services. And what we do in DES is we help you first and foremost to understand what type of student you are and how you learn. Because what we have found is the way you get through your undergrad program is not enough for medical school. You got to take it up a notch. And so we help you to get up to that higher level by making sure you know how to study, making sure you have finessed your test taking skills, and more importantly, teaching you how to become a physician. And so DES is a voluntary service that we provide to our students. You never have to walk into their doors. You don't have to take advantage of any tutoring or anything. But I want to let you know that about 85% of our students do utilize the services of DES at some point. Now, another support office that we have for our students to take advantage of is the Office of Career Guidance and Student Development. Now, this is the office that helps you put together your residency strategy, so to speak. They help you to develop your plan or your checklist of everything you're going to do and all the steps you will take to make sure you get to that ultimate goal of residency and then becoming a practicing physician. Now, Danish, can you talk a little bit about your DES experience and also Office of Career Guidance and Student Development?
Sure. So DES is a great tool. It's comprised of a lot of different types of people who will teach you in different capacities. Some of them are your senior students who have just passed the class before you and did really well in the class, and they share with you their techniques of how to kind of master certain topics and subjects. What are some ways to remember them? Because this is a vast amount of knowledge. I mean, I know you guys are UCLA, South Campus mainly, probably a lot of sciences. So I know how that goes. I was there, but this is like on a different level. And so, you know, you have a bunch of people who kind of did it really well, and they share with you their techniques and the methods that they use. And a lot of times, you know, you may not understand a topic just because it was explained a certain way. You have multiple different students and graduates from other medical schools who are there as tutors also, who will teach you and kind of show you a different approach maybe that may stick in your head a little bit better. These people are available usually after all the lectures and classes are over in the evening time, around like 6 or 7 p.m. And so it doesn't, you know, cut into any class time, any lab time, or any of that stuff. And it's a good way to meet people, you know, intermingle with people who have already taken the class, so you can kind of pick their brain and see kind of what works for you. And there are multiple groups, so if, you know, one way doesn't work for you, another way may work better for you. So I highly suggest utilizing DES. As far as Office of Career Guidance, I can't emphasize how amazing they are. They will help you throughout your process and progress on your path to becoming a resident. All sorts of different opportunities that may arise. Let's say worst case scenario, you don't match the first time that you apply. You don't fall off SGU's radar. The Office of Career Guidance will help you with all sorts of different tracks that they offer to help you, you know, enhance your application to make you look like the desired resident that, you know, they're you know, training you to be. So all these things are there for your you know, help and betterment. And you know, if you decide to go to SGU, it would be a great thing to take advantage of.
Thank you, Danish, for sharing that experience. Now, another factor that is very important to look at is a personalized experience. So as Danish talked a lot about the support that you receive and the ability to have those connections, you want to make sure that those connections are not short term. That is something that you will be able to carry with you as you progress through medical school, to clinical rotations, to residency and beyond. And so when you look at your alumni, you want to always look at how that whole thing is put in place and how it begins. And with SGU, it really begins in the classroom. We have an 8-to-1 ratio of students to faculty and 75% of our classes and labs. So what this means is we give you a small classroom feel in a large university environment. We found that this is a better way for you to be able to hone in on some of those professional development skills that you'll need once you become a physician. Also, it helps with your team working abilities, because we know that working in the medical profession is not a instance where you're only working by yourself. You rely on a team to help you care for the patient. And so you start developing those skills of how to get the best from your team members while you're actually in class. Now, we also provide you with your education in a state-of-the-art system that allows you to be able to really work on the technology and everything that's currently available and being used in the hospitals. So no antiquated equipment, no out-of-date materials. Everything is up to date and current and cutting edge. And we're always updating our classrooms and labs to make sure that when you do step into the medical environment, that you are familiar with everything that you will be using. So another factor that a lot of our students look at is campus community. So when we talk about campus community, we look at it beyond the classroom. So now we're looking at the entire living environment, social. What can you do to just step away from the books? How do you just blow off some steam? That's going to be very important to consider, especially if you're looking at an international medical school. You want to make sure that you really connect with the place where you will be attending school. Luckily for us, our campus is on the beautiful island of Grenada in the West Indies. We do have, and let me just tell you, these pictures are not Photoshopped. I went there last August, and it's just as beautiful in person. So I always like to let people know that disclaimer. These are actual photos, and it's very beautiful place. We do have transportation to take you around the island of Grenada, so you don't have to invest in a car. You can use the SGU bus to go grocery shopping or go to a restaurant. Of course, come to school, go shopping, whatever you want to do, any activities, it runs all day. And then there's a tram that takes you around campus. We have brand new dormitories for our students to stay in. That includes weekly maid service. Yes, weekly maid service. So you can focus more on your studies instead of cleaning your dorm. Eating facilities, lots of restaurants. They even have a Subway, a brand new gym, and just lots of places where you can just break off and study, because that's ultimately why you're there. But it does provide you with a lot of options to be able to have fun and interact and really grow as a person as well. So student clubs and organizations is something that a lot of our students take advantage of, and they use this to really help them to develop further in their field. You are able to develop some lasting relationships, and also just explore different interests that you may have had. If there are clubs and organizations that you would like to see that don't exist, we'll help you to get it started. So whether it's resources that you need to help with finding a location to have meeting or funding for materials, we have an entire department that will work with you to help you get going and get the club or organization of your choice established. Now, Danish, can you talk about your experience on the island? I know it was a little different. When you were there, you didn't get the brand new gym, but it's beautiful. But talk with everyone about what your experience was like, and if you joined any clubs or organizations and what you did for fun.
Sure. So m- my experience with just going out and about, like Wendy said, it's already situated in paradise pretty much. So you know, while you're walking to class, or while you're walking to the library, you're always looking out at pristine sunsets and water and beaches. But when you want to kind of step away from the books for a little bit, which I highly encourage you to do, you have multiple very, very beautiful beaches to go to. There's a bunch of water sports that you can do: kayaking, snorkeling, catamaraning. You can go scuba diving. There's a bunch of places where you can get certified to go and get deep sea scuba dive certification thing. And the cool thing about that is you get put on like a database. So no matter where you go internationally, it is recognized, and it's really cheap compared to if you would go somewhere else. But yeah, there's a ton of activities. There's lots to do around the island. The people of Grenada are very, very accommodating and very, very hospitable. But it is a place where they do need your help as part of the campus community just as much as we need them. So it's a mutual thing. There's a lot of organizations where you can join to help the public there, whether it's like blood pressure readings or a blood glucose screening to see if anyone's diabetic. There are a bunch of religious organizations, like the Christian student group, the Muslim Student Association. Then there is a surgery club. There's an emergency medicine club. So there's a bunch of things you can join. If you're into sports, there's a bunch of intramural sports activities that happen. There's a basketball tournament that goes on, flag football that goes on. There's a field there where you have your football field. You play soccer there. So there's just so much that you can do that's offered. It's really endless. And like Wendy said, if there's something that you see or that you have an interest in that doesn't exist, the university does a pretty good job of helping you establish it, promote it, and keep it going. So for me personally, I played basketball recreationally. Joined the tournament a few times. That was a lot of fun. And then just join like random clubs that you go out and help around the island. And then, if you like hiking, there's a lot of really nice trails with waterfalls into the forest. So tons of extracurricular activities for you to do. Most of these things, people go travel and take vacation time to go see. But the cool thing is you're right there. The other really, really cool thing you could do is island hopping. Now, I'm not really sure how all of that's affected due to the pandemic. But there's a lot of Caribbean islands that are nearby that you can hop on to like a small plane or a little boat ride away, and you can check those places out also. But endless amount of things you can do.
Absolutely. And although you're not able to visit the island right now due to the pandemic, once I finish the presentation, I will send you a link where you can do a virtual tour, and also you can submit information to receive some virtual VR goggles. And what you'll do is you'll just scan the little code here, put your cell phone in here, and be able to see through here, kind of like a ViewMaster. I may be dating myself if you don't know what a ViewMaster is, but you'll be able to take a little virtual tour of the island and the campus itself. So while of course it's very important to look at the place where you'll be attending in regards to location, you do want to make sure that the school that you do select is accredited, and that the accreditation that the school holds will allow you to be able to do your clinical rotations in the United States, be able to go into residency, sit for your USMLE exams. So this is where you will have to do research on each school that you're looking to attend to make sure that they do have the appropriate accreditation in place. Now, in regards to St. George's University, we have accreditation through the Grenada Medical and Dental Council. Also, we're recognized by the NCF-MEA as a U.S. Comparable Accreditor. And additionally, we have the Caribbean Accreditation Authority, and we are approved and reviewed by World Federation of Medical Education. I know I just said a mouthful, and you're probably thinking, okay, Wendy, but what does all that mean? Basically, it means that the U.S. Department of Education deems SGU's accreditation as comparable to U.S. accreditation. So if you are looking to utilize FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, where you will be applying for any federal funding, you will be able to do so while attending SGU because our accreditation is comparable to U.S. Department of Education. And that's something you will want to look at for any other school that you're considering if they're an international school. So be sure to keep that in mind. So let's talk about your return on investment. When you speak of cost and you speak of medical school, obviously it's going to be an investment. I mean, look at what you're doing. You have people's lives in your hands. So of course you're going to invest in yourself, but you want to make sure that return on investment is great for you and that it allows you to become the type of physician that you'd like to be. So we have an entire department that is committed to helping you find different factors and ways to be able to cover your medical education. So whether it's utilizing the FAFSA, as I mentioned before, or other scholarship opportunities, looking for grants, things of that nature, we have a financial aid department that'll be able to work with you. On average, when you look at the tuition cost of attending SGU, I like to break it down and say for your tuition and fees, look at about $250,000 to $300,000. Then you want to factor in additionally probably another $100,000 or so for your living expenses. And living expenses can always vary. Some students elect to live on campus. Some students elect to get their own housing on the island. And then also when you come back to the United States for your clinical rotations, will you be staying at home? Will you be staying with family members where you don't have to pay rent? Will you go to a high rent area like New York? Or will you go someplace, maybe Michigan or Ohio, that has a lower cost of living? So those are just factors that will make your commitment to your education different. So that's why we have an entire department that'll sit down with you and actually help you put together a budget to factor out everything that you may be spending while you're in medical school, down to how many times you may travel to come back home during your breaks, or transportation costs, food and clothing and entertainment, things of that nature, so that they can make sure that you're well prepared and that you can focus on your studies. So what's the application process? Here at SGU, we have a very holistic approach to the application process, and that varies based on different universities. So you'll always want to talk with someone in the admissions department to find out what they require for you as you are applying to those schools, so that you can be prepared. If you can get all of that information up front from the various schools that you're looking to apply to, it'll help your application process go a bit easier, because you can just dedicate time to just go ahead and submit those applications in one sitting, instead of going scrambling, getting information from here and getting this and trying to put things together. Now, less than 41% of applicants for the 2019-2020 academic year were accepted and matriculated into USMD programs. So let's talk about that, because as you're determining where to apply, keep in mind that as you're looking at a USMD program, not all students get accepted into the USMD program. So that's what makes international universities so attractive to our students, simply because there's just not enough space in the USMD schools. The demand definitely exceeds the space that's available. And that's where an option like SGU becomes very attractive for a lot of students, because you can get that same quality education, except your location is in an island. Is beautiful. Not saying that places in the US aren't beautiful, but you're on an island. So you get that whole international experience. It gives you something different to speak about when you are going through your interviews for your residency. And then also it helps you just to become more well-rounded, because oftentimes your international schools allow you to meet more people from different countries, and it just helps to broaden your overall experience. So ultimately, what's your goal? Is to become a practicing physician. So by doing your homework, by making sure that you're reaching out to these schools and getting all the information that you need, you'll be able to make the best decision for yourself to help you ultimately become that physician that you've been probably dreaming about since you were a kid. Now, at this time, I would like to open things up so that we can get some of your questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Danish. You're probably tired of hearing me talk. Most people are like, Wendy, we want to talk to the grad. We want to talk with him to find out what's going on in the medical field. So I want to go over some information with you in regards to keeping in touch. We do have an Office of Admissions that you can email with any questions that you have in regards to the admissions process. If you want to screenshot this or take a picture of it with your cell phone, you can. Also, we have something very unique called Speak to a Student. We have this hotline developed that will allow you to call in and actually talk to one of our students. You can ask any questions about, how do I pack? How do I need to dress? I like Starbucks. Do they have Starbucks? We don't have Starbucks. We have a place called Rituals, which is just as good and the same colors. But you can ask them any questions that you may have, and they'll be able to assist you. So I hope that you found this information helpful. I hope that as you are researching your international medical schools, that SGU is one that you will put into your rotation. And if you'd like to keep in touch, you can email the admissions@sgu.edu, or you can go ahead and drop your email address in the Q&A or chat box to me, and I'll be sure to keep in touch with you. So at this time, I'd like to open it up and see what questions you have for Danish. So Danish, can you talk a little bit about why you chose an international school as opposed to going to a school in the United States?
Yeah, of course. I was actually very apprehensive at first. There's this whole stigma like, oh, you're going to Caribbean school, and let's be real, it exists. Okay, especially for students at UCLA. When I was there, everyone is applying to all the U.S. schools. But one of the things that I grew up as a son of a businessman, and he always wanted to see, okay, when you invest in something, what's the return on that investment? And I taught in nursing school for 3 years, and I used to teach, ask the same thing. Why are you here? Because, or why would you ever go into any field if you're going to spend a lot of money going into it and only make a fraction of that back? That's not a very good career to go into. Much the same way, why would you pick a school if the return is not that great? And I looked at SGU as one of the schools, and I said, okay, well, look, their matriculation rate's really good. The USMLE pass rate is phenomenal. Above 90% on the first try. See how many of these students are getting into residency, and where are they getting into residency? Are they just getting into programs that are kind of left over that no one wants to go to, or are they going into residency programs that are, very competitive and very well known? Do I have an option to get into a specialty that I would like to get into? Because I'm not really sure if this is a specialty that I want to get into right away. As a student, you don't know until you actually go and do clinicals and are exposed to it. I was an EMT and a phlebotomist beforehand. I worked in the emergency room, and I thought I knew what I wanted to do. Then when I went to clinicals, well, things changed because it's different from what you see on TV and what you see in ancillary care, as whatever supportive role that you may have worked at, but it's different as a medical student actually studying it. And so I looked at all of those things, and I thought, oh, SU is placing, its medical graduates into really well-known places, and there's just too many to name. But you can look that up on their website. There's a whole list of where people graduated and where they're going and what specialty they're in. And I can speak from my own personal experience. A lot of my friends that I went to UCLA with that graduated and actually ended up going to SGU. Very close friends of mine, one's a neurosurgeon at Rutgers. One is a rheumatologist, anesthesiologist, a hand surgeon, and these are all UCLA grads that went on to SGU, that went on to residency, and went to very, very reputable universities. Some are program directors, some are head of the unit, like as far as the ICU goes or the surgery unit. So it just goes to show that it's putting out very high quality and very qualified people that are getting into very, tough places to get into otherwise. I mentioned neurosurgery. Neurosurgery is kind of like the cream of the crop. You could graduate from Johns Hopkins and not get in there. But I have a friend that I went to SGU with that is in neurosurgery or is a neurosurgeon. So I looked at those things. One of the other things that really played a huge part for me was location. I grew up next to the coast. I wanted to go somewhere that was close to the coast. Well, you're on an island. There's tons of coast around, tons of beautiful coastline around. And it's a very diverse student population. I met people from all over the world, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, parts of Europe. So if you're the type of person who wants to meet people from around the world, because people from around the world will bring a different mindset, a different way of thinking about things, a different way of approaching things. And as a doctor, you're not always going to meet the same population. Let's say you're from Ventura County. You're not going to just meet that population from Ventura County. You're going to meet people from all around the world. And to get that training, it's not just training, but to get that exposure firsthand, it's invaluable. Right now, as someone who sees patients from all over the place, people I met at medical school, things I picked up about their culture, their language, their food, I was able to bring that into my practice. And so when I, have a patient from that background, I can relate to them and I can connect with them, and that goes a long way. You don't want to have someone taking care of you who doesn't even understand where you're coming from. So those are some of the things that I looked into. And to be frankly honest with you, I looked at, my colleagues who went ahead of me that were, so I was a physiologic science major, and I thought, okay, of the people from my major who went on to SGU, what was their experience there, and what's their input? Because we're coming from the same fraternity, coming from the same university, same kind of background. Is it, why did you guys choose that? And so these were the same kind of reasons that they were giving me, and they were excelling, and they're all practicing physicians. Not a single one of those people that went from UCLA to SGU kind of fell off the track. They're all doing really well. They're all very well established physicians in the US. I know about a few months out myself. So, these are some of the main reasons. I could talk your head off for about another hour and a half. But these are kind of the main reasons why I chose to go to SGU. And then you can ask, well, why SGU? There's a bunch of other, universities in the Caribbean. And I'm sure Wendy and Xavier could have a very, good, hundreds of reasons why. But for me personally, these are the things I looked at. Then you look at cost. And I talked to people from other places, and I said, and these are real stories. These are real tutorials from people that I know personally. So, we went to this Caribbean school named X University, whatever. And when we got to the clinicals, we were fending for ourselves. We didn't have, a specific set of people that were kind of coordinating our clinical rotations at different hospitals. Our paperwork, it was just delayed. And then, when it comes time for residency, we didn't have the correct paper. There's a bunch of paperwork that has to be filled out and stamped, and kind of a paper trail to say, yes, you were in a legit hospital and you really got legitimate training in, let's say, surgery or emergency medicine or whatnot, and you legitimately did these procedures. And so SGU does a phenomenal job of all of that. Once you get in, all you have to do is focus on your studies and focus on your clinical skills and make sure you're doing your due diligence as a student. All this other secretarial work is all taken care of by the university and its support staff. And so when I asked people that I knew ahead of me that were, a year or 2 years ahead, sometimes 3 years ahead, that had gone to SGU versus other places, that made a huge difference in picking SGU over any other university. And then, like Wendy spoke about, it is accredited. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to say some of the things that people told me when I was going. Oh, no, if you go to, a Caribbean school, you're not going to be able to practice in America. That myth is busted. I'm standing in front of you as a senior resident at an American hospital. All my colleagues that went to SGU are all practicing physicians, driving their Teslas and Mercedes and Benz and whatever they want to. So those are myths. People will say what they have heard in the past from not reputable sources. So the best thing to do is to go to the source itself and to ask questions, and everything is online. It's plain and simple in writing. I personally got loans from the US Department of Education. I applied for the FAFSA, and so it was very easy to get all that done. And just as my other friends who went to American universities, I had the same exact process, same exact they did. And as far as knowledge, you'll be surprised how many times I have friends that actually call me and ask me, hey, what would you do in this situation? And they went to XYZ American universities, medical colleges. So I'm very, very happy. And if I had to do it over again, I would. And this is why I'm here. I do it out of my free will to come share with you my experience. And even more so, I was very excited to come here today and talk to you guys as a UCLA alum. I wish I had this opportunity to talk to people, or just have like a recording to listen to someone say, listen, it is possible. It is a very good option. And especially, let's say, you did apply to an American university and you didn't get in. You got to wait a whole nother year to apply to an American university. And the end goal should always be, I want to be a good medical practitioner. That's the goal that you should have for yourself. Not, oh, I went to XYZ university and I'm from here or whatever. SGU has a rolling admission process where you don't have to wait a whole year. If you don't get into an American medical school, go ahead and apply. You have nothing to lose. And there's, there's another thing that SGU has is, let's say you do apply to SGU, you get in, and you also apply to an American medical school, and you get into the American medical school. Well, then, SGU will work it out. And, Wendy can probably talk about that. You can email her and she'll give you the specifics of that. But it's a great university. And if I got into another university and SGU over again in a heartbeat, I would go back to SGU. And like I alluded to before, I graduated with my medical degree, and I went back to get my master's in business administration in multi-sector health management from SGU. So it is a wonderful place to go and place to study, lots of support. And in the future, if I want to study some more, I would go back to SGU. So, that's just how I feel. Just like I would highly recommend anyone to go to UCLA, I would highly recommend people to go to SGU.
Nice, thank you. So Samuel actually had a question, and Samuel and Priya, you can actually unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question and speak with Danish. Samuel wants to know, how isolating is medical school on an island? Good question.
Good question. Yes, it is a little isolating, but it's isolating from you left. Medical school is isolating, regardless of where you go. Someone, when I was applying to medical school, someone was like, "Oh, prepare yourself." People who had already gone through it. It's like you've never experienced before. Hockey student, like, oh yeah, I'm a Regent Scholar at UCLA. I'm an alumni scholar. I'm a South Campus major. I got this. And these are people who have gone to American medical schools. But when you get to medical school, you literally get to a point where you are scheduling your bathroom breaks, your meals, and your sleep. Because there's more information than there is time in the day to digest and get all that stuff in your head. So as far as how isolating it is, I would say it's any other medical school there is. The only difference is very few people get into your first choice medical school. So let's say you're from, Redondo Beach, right? And you apply to UCLA Medical School, David Geffen School of Medicine. If you get in, great. You're still going to be isolated. You're going to bury your head in that book the whole time. The one thing you have is, let's say you have a day off. Well, yeah, you can go from, the campus to Redondo Beach. You can drive there very easy. But more often than not, if you're from Redondo Beach, you're probably not everybody from Redondo Beach is going to get into UCLA. You may get into medical school in Kansas. And if you have a day off, you're not going to fly back to Redondo Beach. You just don't have time. It's logistically impossible. So you're going to be isolated from your friends and family back at home. And that's exactly the same thing if you're on an island in Grenada. I didn't get to see my family for 6 months at a time, but neither did my friends that lived 2-3 hours away from their family in the States. That's just the nature of medical school, and that's how it is. The one good thing is that's different about Grenada is everybody on the island is sharing the same experience as you, and you end up building a very good camaraderie and friendship with people that are there. You're sharing an experience that most other people don't get to experience unless you've actually lived on an island. It has its own unique culture. It has its unique set of experiences that others may not experience. You end up really appreciating literally everything in life. And you get to share that with the group of people you are learning medicine with. It is an island. Sometimes there are hurricanes out in the ocean, and they affect, power lines and stuff like that. And you learn there's generators on the island and all sorts of things to accommodate you, but you learn to share those experiences, and those are some shared experiences that build character and quite honestly, you actually have fond memories of that. So you are isolated from some friends and family, but you build your own friends and family on the island, just as you would with any other university or school that you go to.
Thank you. So do you have any other questions for Danish? You're welcome, Samuel. If not, I did put some links in for you to check out our residencies match, our clinical rotations, and also if you're interested in attending some of our upcoming sessions, I put the link there as well. We do have a discussion coming up next week for doctors on call. This is where we'll bring in some of our graduates who are now practicing pediatricians this cycle, and they'll talk about what it's like to be a pediatrician, get that whole day in the life. And so we have those for different specialties. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click one of the links that I sent you for information sessions, and you'll be able to get that information. So I want to thank everyone for attending. Christina, thank you so much for putting this together. Danish, thank you for taking time out to be here. Samuel, I appreciate you for joining. I wish you the best in your journey. If you have any questions or if there's anything we can do, please feel free to reach out to us. And I look forward to seeing you all again.